the illusion of a strong marriage, and the lie everyone believed. There are celebrity breakups that feel predictable, the kind people see coming months, sometimes years, before the headlines confirm it. And then there are breakups like this one, the kind that hits without warning, the kind that makes even longtime fans stop scrolling, rewind the video, and ask one uncomfortable question. How did we not see this coming? For years, Rasheeda Frost and Kirk Frost presented themselves as survivors. Not perfect, not untouched by scandal, but resilient. A couple that had been tested publicly, humiliated openly, and still somehow stood together. Every time the internet counted them out, they stayed married. Every time a new rumor surfaced, Rasheeda showed up, calm, composed, and loyal. That loyalty became her brand. And that's exactly why what happened next shattered everything. Because this time, it wasn't another rumor. It wasn't another love and hip-hop moment. It wasn't even another woman, at least not in the way people expected. It was proof. It was betrayal layered on top of betrayal. And it exposed a truth that Rasheeda had been trying to outrun for years. To understand why this moment was different, you have to understand the illusion that came before it. From the outside, Rasheeda and Kirk looked like a couple that had already survived the worst. Cheating scandals, public criticism, relentless commentary from fans and bloggers. Nothing seemed strong enough to finally break them apart. Rasheeda stayed. Over and over again, she stayed. And with every scandal she survived, the narrative changed. She wasn't just a wife anymore. She became a symbol of forgiveness, a symbol of endurance, a symbol of a woman who believed marriage meant standing your ground, even when it hurt. But what the public didn't see was the emotional cost of holding that position for so long. Behind closed doors, the cracks were forming. Insiders say the energy in their home had shifted long before the story broke. Conversations became shorter, laughter became rare. Trust, once fragile, was now hanging by a thread. Rasheeda noticed the changes, the late nights, the phone always face down, the defensiveness over small questions that never used to matter. At first, she did what she had always done. She rationalized. Kirk was busy. Kirk was stressed. Kirk had been through worse phases before. Because when you've forgiven someone repeatedly, you don't immediately assume the worst. You convince yourself growth is happening. You convince yourself love is still stronger than history. And for a while, Rasheeda believed it. Until one night changed everything. It didn't start with a confrontation. It didn't start with screaming or accusations. It started quietly with a message, then another, then another. Late at night, Rasheeda sat alone, scrolling through her phone. What she saw wasn't speculation. It wasn't screenshots from strangers. It wasn't anonymous gossip sent by fans. It was undeniable evidence. Messages, images, voice notes, conversations that weren't meant for her eyes, but landed there anyway. And suddenly, years of confusion snapped into focus. The late-night calls that went unanswered, the unexplained absences, the emotional distance she had tried so hard to ignore. This wasn't flirtation. This wasn't temptation. This was a full-blown, carefully hidden affair. And the most devastating part, the woman wasn't a stranger. She was someone Rasheeda knew, someone she trusted, someone who had been close enough to see her vulnerability up close. In that moment, the betrayal didn't just feel romantic, it felt personal, strategic, deliberate. Insiders say Rasheeda didn't cry right away. Instead, she went numb. That kind of numbness only comes when your body is trying to protect you from something too painful to process all at once. Her hands shook as she scrolled. Her heart raced as each new detail confirmed what she had been avoiding for months. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a pattern repeating itself, with higher stakes than ever before. And for the first time in years, Rasheeda didn't ask herself how to fix it. She asked herself something far more dangerous. Why am I still here? That question changed everything. Minutes later, she made the call. Not to argue. Not to negotiate. Not to beg for honesty. Just to confront the truth head-on. When Kirk answered, his voice was calm, too calm. And that calm told Rasheeda more than any confession ever could. She told him they needed to talk. Now, there was hesitation on the line, a pause long enough to confirm her worst fear. 20 minutes later, he agreed to come home. Those 20 minutes felt longer than any argument they'd ever had. As she waited, Rasheeda replayed every excuse she had accepted over the years. Every moment she had defended him publicly while privately swallowing doubt. Every time she chose loyalty over self-respect. And in that silence, a realization settled in. This confrontation wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about ending the lie. When the door finally opened, the energy in the room shifted instantly. Kirk didn't need to say anything. He saw it in her eyes. This wasn't another cycle. This was the breaking point. Without raising her voice, Rasheeda held up her phone. No dramatics, no performance, just truth. And for the first time, Kirk had no response. No denial. No explanation. No story convincing enough to escape what was coming next. Because some moments don't require yelling. They require clarity. And Rasheeda had finally reached it. What happened in the minutes that followed would unravel years of carefully maintained image, expose secrets no one saw coming, and introduce a revelation so explosive that even longtime fans weren't prepared for it. Because the affair wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The proof that destroyed everything. The most dangerous lies aren't the ones people tell out loud. They're the ones hidden in plain sight, buried inside routine, trust, and familiarity. For Rasheeda, the truth didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, cruelly, piece by piece. Each message revealed another layer. Each image stripped away another excuse she had once defended. At first, she hoped there was an explanation, some misunderstanding, some context that could soften the blow, but the deeper she looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't impulsive. This was intentional, and it had been happening for months. The messages weren't vague. They weren't flirty jokes or careless emojis. They were explicit conversations about meetings, secrecy, and emotional attachment. There were timestamps that lined up perfectly with the nights Kirk claimed he was working late. Voice notes whispered in tones reserved for intimacy, not friendship. And then there were the photos. Not selfies. Not innocent group shots. But images taken in hotel rooms, dim lighting, bodies close enough to confirm what words no longer needed to explain. This was a double life, carefully managed, carefully hidden, and deliberately protected. Insiders say Rasheeda stopped breathing for a moment. The kind of pause where your mind disconnects from your body because reality is too heavy to carry all at once. Years of loyalty collided with undeniable proof, and something inside her finally broke. What made it worse wasn't just the betrayal. It was the familiarity. The woman in the messages wasn't someone Kirk met randomly. She wasn't a fan. She wasn't a stranger sliding into his DMs. She was someone Rasheeda recognized. Someone who had been present in her life long enough to know her vulnerabilities. Someone who had listened to her talk about her marriage struggles while secretly contributing to them. That realization triggered something far deeper than anger. It triggered humiliation. The kind that doesn't scream, it suffocates. Every interaction Rasheeda replayed suddenly carried new meaning. Every smile felt fake. Every conversation felt staged. The betrayal didn't just happen behind her back. It happened in front of her, disguised as loyalty. For years, Rasheeda had defended Kirk publicly. She had taken criticism, judgment, and ridicule from fans who questioned why she stayed. And she stayed anyway, because she believed marriage meant weathering storms, not running from them. But this storm was different. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about self-respect. According to sources close to the situation, Rasheeda didn't confront Kirk immediately after discovering the evidence. She needed time, not to calm down, but to understand what she was truly dealing with. And what she discovered next made everything worse. As she cross-referenced timelines, dates, and locations, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The affair wasn't sporadic. It wasn't on and off. It was consistent, calculated, protected. There were gaps in Kirk's schedule that now had names attached to them. There were trips that suddenly had context. Moments when Rasheeda felt distance and blamed herself were now clearly linked to someone else occupying space that was never meant for them. That realization hurt more than the cheating itself, because it meant Rasheeda hadn't just been betrayed. She had been replaced, emotionally, temporarily, repeatedly. And still, even with all of that, she didn't explode. Instead, something inside her went quiet. That silence wasn't weakness. It was resolve forming. By the time she decided to call Kirk, Rasheeda wasn't looking for explanations. She wasn't interested in excuses. She wasn't asking for apologies she'd already heard before. She wanted honesty. And if she wasn't going to get it willingly, she was prepared to take it forcefully. When Kirk walked through the door that night, he could feel it immediately. The tension wasn't loud. It was heavy, dense, the kind that fills a room before words ever do. Rasheeda didn't pace. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She stood still. That's what unnerved him. When she lifted her phone, the evidence visible on the screen, there was nowhere left to hide. And for a brief moment, just a flicker, Kirk's mask slipped. That flicker told Rasheeda everything she needed to know. He knew. He had known she would find out eventually. And he had still done it anyway. The confrontation that followed wasn't explosive. It was surgical. Rasheeda asked direct questions. Kirk gave incomplete answers. He minimized. She clarified. He hesitated. She pressed harder. And with every pause, every deflection, the truth grew louder. This wasn't just infidelity. It was deception layered on top of deception. When Rasheeda demanded to know who the woman was, Kirk avoided the question. That hesitation was more revealing than any confession, because hesitation only exists when the truth is too damaging to speak easily. Eventually, he admitted what she already suspected. The affair wasn't random. It was connected to their past. And that connection opened wounds Rasheeda thought had healed years ago. But even then, the worst revelation hadn't surfaced yet. Not the one that would knock the air out of her lungs. Not the one that would permanently destroy any chance of reconciliation. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't stop at cheating. Sometimes it creates consequences that can't be undone. And when Kirk finally revealed what he had been hiding, the truth he claimed was complicated. The weight of it shattered whatever hope Rasheeda had left. The woman wasn't just involved with him. She was pregnant. That single word changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about broken trust. It was about a future Rasheeda hadn't consented to. A child created in secrecy. A permanent reminder of disrespect she could never escape. In that moment, Rasheeda didn't just lose her marriage. She lost the illusion that it could ever be repaired. And as the room filled with silence once again, one thing became painfully clear. This time, there would be no coming back. But even that wasn't the full truth. Because the identity of the woman and the layers of deception still hidden were far worse than anyone imagined. And what Rasheeda would discover next wouldn't just hurt her. It would expose a betrayal so close, so intimate, that it would redefine everything she thought she knew. About loyalty. The confrontation that shattered the marriage. Some confrontations are loud. Others are devastating because of how quiet they are. When Kirk finally stood in front of Rasheeda that night, the silence between them carried more weight than years of arguments ever had. There was no yelling, no chaos, just two people standing at the edge of something that could never be rebuilt. Rasheeda didn't rush. She let the moment stretch. Because when someone knows they're guilty, silence is torture. Kirk spoke first, his voice guarded, measured, almost rehearsed. He asked what was going on, as if the evidence sitting inches from his face wasn't already screaming the answer. Rasheeda didn't flinch. She simply asked one question. Who is she? That question wasn't emotional. It wasn't desperate. It was surgical. Kirk hesitated. And that hesitation confirmed everything. People lie with words. They tell the truth with pauses. Rasheeda pressed again, calm, controlled, unwavering. She made it clear she already knew enough and that lying would only make things worse. Still, Kirk tried. He minimized. He reframed. He reached for excuses that had worked before. But this time, they didn't land. Because Rasheeda wasn't arguing to understand anymore. She was listening to decide. When she told him she had proof, messages, images, recordings, something shifted in his expression. The confidence drained from his face. The walls he'd built collapsed inward. And that's when the truth began leaking out. Slowly, reluctantly, piece by piece. But even then, Kirk was still holding something back. Rasheeda could feel it. She had spent years learning his patterns. When he was lying, when he was hiding, when he was afraid of what would happen if the full truth came out. And finally, she asked the question that forced everything into the open. What aren't you telling me? Kirk looked away. That moment changed the temperature in the room. Because people only look away when the truth is too heavy to survive eye contact. He told her there was something complicated she didn't know yet. Rasheeda didn't react. She didn't interrupt. She simply waited. And then he said it. The woman was pregnant. The word didn't register immediately. Rasheeda stood frozen, as if her body needed time to catch up with what her ears had just heard. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred. For a brief second, the room felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's life collapse from a distance. Pregnant. That wasn't just betrayal. That was permanence. A decision that created a future she never agreed to be part of. When she asked how long he had known, his answer made it worse. Weeks. Weeks of walking around like nothing had changed. Weeks of pretending they were still trying to fix their marriage while carrying a secret that would destroy it completely. That realization cut deeper than the affair itself. Because it meant every moment of working things out had been fake. Every conversation about healing had been dishonest. Every attempt at reconciliation had been built on a lie. Rasheeda didn't scream. She laughed. But there was no humor in it. It was the kind of laugh that comes when reality finally exposes itself, when denial no longer has anywhere to hide. When she asked who the woman was, Kirk hesitated again. That hesitation was fatal. Because Rasheeda already knew what it meant. When he finally said the name, Jasmine, the ground disappeared beneath her. Jasmine wasn't just another woman. She was history. She was pain Rasheeda had already survived once. She was the woman Kirk had cheated with years ago. The woman he had a child with. The woman Rasheeda had forced herself to forgive for the sake of peace, family, and closure. Rasheeda had done the impossible back then. She had swallowed her pride. She had accepted a child that wasn't hers into her life. She had chosen grace over resentment. And now, Kirk had gone back. Not just emotionally. Physically, intentionally, repeatedly. That betrayal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. In that moment, something inside Rasheeda snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was who he was. Years of excuses collapsed into one undeniable truth. Kirk didn't change. He simply got better at hiding. When Rasheeda confronted him about choosing Jasmine again, after everything, his response was weak. He claimed it wasn't supposed to happen, that he never meant to hurt her. But intentions don't erase consequences. And Rasheeda finally stopped accepting intentions as currency. She told him it was over. Not dramatically, Not emotionally. Decisively. For the first time, Kirk panicked. He pleaded. He minimized. He asked her not to do this. But the power dynamic had shifted. Rasheeda wasn't negotiating anymore. She wasn't begging him to choose her. She was choosing herself. When she turned away from him, physically walking out of the conversation, it wasn't just symbolic. It was final. But even then, Kirk tried one last thing. He claimed there was more she didn't know. What Rasheeda didn't realize yet was that the worst betrayal wasn't behind her. It was still waiting. Because the woman carrying Kirk's child wasn't the only one involved. And the next revelation would expose a level of deception so close to home that it would turn her pain into fury. As Rasheeda left that room, she thought she had reached the bottom. She hadn't. She was about to discover that the affair had spread into her inner circle. And when that truth came out, there would be no forgiveness left to offer. The pregnancy bombshell, and the past that refused to stay buried. Some betrayals hurt because they're unexpected. Others hurt because you survived them once and never imagined you'd be forced to relive them again. For Rasheeda, hearing Jasmine's name felt like reopening a wound she had spent years trying to heal. This wasn't just another woman. This was the embodiment of a past she thought had been closed permanently. Years earlier, Jasmine had nearly destroyed Rasheeda's marriage. The scandal had been public, humiliating, and deeply personal. Kirk hadn't just cheated, he had created a child outside his marriage. And Rasheeda had done something most people said she never should have done. She stayed. She chose forgiveness when walking away would have been easier. She accepted a reality she never asked for and found a way to coexist with the consequences. She put her pride aside for the sake of peace, family, and dignity. And for a long time, she believed that sacrifice meant something. Until now. Because hearing that Kirk had gone back to Jasmine wasn't just betrayal, it was disrespect layered on top of emotional cruelty. It meant everything Rasheeda endured back then had been meaningless. Every tear, every public defense, every time she convinced herself growth had happened. It hadn't. According to sources, Rasheeda stood frozen after the name left Kirk's mouth. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. Her face went still in a way that signaled something far more serious than anger. Acceptance. Not forgiveness. Acceptance of the truth she could no longer deny. Kirk tried to explain. He said it just happened. He said old feelings resurfaced. He said he didn't plan for it to go this far. But planning doesn't matter when patterns repeat. Rasheeda saw the pattern clearly now. Every time she forgave, Kirk learned he could survive the consequences. Every second chance taught him there would always be another. And now, that lesson had come back to haunt her. When she asked about the pregnancy again, this time pressing for details, Kirk avoided her eyes. He admitted Jasmine was keeping the baby. He admitted there had been conversations about what came next. What he didn't say was more revealing than what he did. He hadn't protected Rasheeda. He hadn't prioritized her. He hadn't even considered how this would permanently alter her life. Because pregnancy isn't a scandal that fades. It's a lifelong consequence. And in that moment, Rasheeda realized this betrayal wasn't temporary. It was permanent. No apology could erase it. No counseling could undo it. No reconciliation could make it disappear. This wasn't about rebuilding trust. This was about survival. Rasheeda told Kirk something she had never said before. She told him she was done, completely. Not taking a break. Not figuring things out. Done. For the first time, Kirk understood she meant it. And that scared him. He tried to regain control. He asked her not to make decisions while emotional. He said they could work through it. He reminded her of their history, their longevity, everything they had built together. But Rasheeda wasn't emotional. She was awake. She told him history wasn't enough anymore. Longevity wasn't proof of love. It was proof of endurance. And endurance without respect was no longer something she was willing to offer. She turned away from him and walked toward the staircase, not because she needed space, but because she needed distance from a man she no longer recognized. That's when Kirk stopped her. He told her there was more she didn't know. At first, Rasheeda didn't turn around. She assumed it was another attempt to soften the blow, another half-truth meant to buy time. But then he said something that made her stop cold. He told her Jasmine wasn't the only woman involved. That sentence changed everything. Rasheeda turned slowly, her heart pounding harder than it had all night. She demanded clarity. No more fragments, no more delays. And that's when Kirk made his biggest mistake. He admitted the affair extended beyond Jasmine. He admitted there was another woman, someone closer than Rasheeda could have ever imagined. Someone who had been inside her home, inside her trust, inside her life. At that point, Rasheeda didn't yell. She didn't move. She stared at him, waiting, because she already knew what it meant. When he refused to say the name immediately, the truth began forming in her mind before the words ever came out. The silence between them stretched painfully long. And when the name finally surfaced later, outside of that room, it would hit harder than anything that came before. But at that moment, Rasheeda didn't know who the other woman was yet. She only knew this. The betrayal had spread into her inner circle. And that realization hurt worse than the pregnancy. Because affairs can be blamed on temptation. But betrayal from inside your life is intentional. Rasheeda left the house that night without another word. She didn't grab bags. She didn't make announcements. She didn't explain herself to anyone. She just needed air. Distance. Control. The silence that followed was heavy, not peaceful, but final. The kind of silence that settles after something irreversible has happened. Later that night, as Rasheeda sat alone, trying to process everything, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was short, but alarming. "I think we need to talk. It's about Kirk." Her heart dropped. She didn't respond immediately. She stared at the screen, instinct screaming at her to ignore it. She had already heard enough, already suffered enough. But something about the message felt urgent, almost like a warning. When she finally replied, asking who it was, the response came quickly. "Meet me in an hour. You deserve the full truth." That sentence sealed it. Because Rasheeda already knew the truth she wasn't complete. And she was right. The meeting that followed wouldn't just expose Kirk. It would expose a betrayal so close, so calculated, that it would shatter Rasheeda's sense of reality and ignite a fire she would never put out again. The second betrayal, when loyalty breaks from inside the house. There are betrayals you can prepare for. And then there are betrayals so close, so intimate, that they don't just hurt. You question your ability to trust anyone ever again. Rasheeda didn't sleep that night. The silence in the house felt louder than any argument. Every corner carried memories that now felt poisoned. She replayed Kirk's words over and over, trying to separate truth from manipulation, fact from damage control. But one thing was clear. There was more. That message from the unknown number wouldn't leave her mind. When Rasheeda finally decided to go, it wasn't curiosity that drove her. It was instinct. A deep, unsettling feeling that the worst betrayal hadn't revealed itself yet. The cafe was quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place people choose when they don't want to be seen. Rasheeda scanned the room cautiously, every nerve on edge. Then she saw her. A young woman sitting alone in the back corner, nervous, guarded, constantly glancing toward the door. When Rasheeda approached, the woman looked up slowly. And in that instant, Rasheeda felt her chest tighten. Because she recognized her. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't a fan. This was someone tied directly to her life. The woman introduced herself quietly. It was Jasmine. The same Jasmine whose name had already detonated Rasheeda's world. The irony was cruel. The woman who had caused one of the most painful chapters of Rasheeda's marriage was now the one delivering the truth that would end it completely. Jasmine didn't defend herself. She didn't justify her past. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Instead, she said something that made Rasheeda's blood run cold. "The woman Kirk got pregnant isn't me." That sentence hit harder than any scream could have. Jasmine explained that Kirk had been lying to both of them, that there was another woman, one whose involvement ran deeper, longer, and closer than Rasheeda could have imagined. At first, Rasheeda dismissed it. She had already absorbed too much pain. She wasn't prepared to believe there was still more. But then Jasmine said the words that shattered everything. "She's been in your life for years." Rasheeda's heart dropped. Years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. When Jasmine finally said the name, Rasheeda felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. It was her assistant. The woman she trusted with her schedule. Her business. Her private moments. Her home. Someone who stood beside her during some of the hardest days of her marriage, while secretly sleeping with her husband. That betrayal wasn't accidental. It was calculated. Jasmine slid her phone across the table. Rasheeda hesitated. Because once you see proof, there's no going back. What appeared on the screen erased any remaining doubt. Photos, videos, voice recordings, messages discussing secrecy, timing, and pregnancy. There were conversations about how long they could hide it, how Rasheeda would react, how Kirk would handle the fallout. This wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. Rasheeda's hands shook as she scrolled. Her breath became shallow. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was rage mixed with humiliation and disbelief. The woman she had defended publicly had betrayed her privately. And the woman she trusted professionally had destroyed her personally. In that moment, something inside Rasheeda hardened. The tears didn't come. The panic didn't take over. Instead, clarity settled in. This wasn't a situation to cry through. This was a situation to end. Rasheeda stood up abruptly, leaving the phone on the table. She didn't argue. She didn't question Jasmine's motives. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. When she left the cafe, Rasheeda didn't feel broken. She felt focused. Back at the house, the air felt different. Cold. Unwelcoming. Kirk wasn't home yet, but his presence was everywhere. His belongings, his space, his audacity to still exist in her world like nothing had changed. When he finally walked through the door later that night, Rasheeda was ready. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply told him she knew everything. The second betrayal. The assistant. The pregnancy. The lies stacked on top of lies. For the first time, Kirk had no defense. No spin. No escape. His silence was an admission. Rasheeda told him she was done, immediately, permanently. That there would be no private reconciliation. No quiet repair behind closed doors. No protecting his image at the expense of her sanity. This time, the truth was coming out. Not because she wanted revenge, but because silence had cost her too much already. As she turned to leave the room, she saw her assistant standing in the hallway, hands clasped, face pale, eyes full of fear. The sight ignited something primal. Rasheeda confronted her directly. There were no insults, no theatrics, just truth. She told her to leave. Now. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. The assistant didn't argue. She couldn't. And when the door finally closed behind her, Rasheeda stood still, heart racing, chest tight, but something had shifted. She wasn't shattered anymore. She was free. For the first time in years, Rasheeda wasn't reacting to chaos. She was controlling the narrative. And what she planned to do next would make sure the world knew exactly who Kirk Frost really was. Public fallout, power shift, and the moment Rasheeda took her life back. When scandals break in the public eye, people expect noise. They expect screaming headlines, chaotic social media rants, messy interviews, and emotional outbursts. That's the formula audiences are used to. That's what they wait for. But Rasheeda didn't follow the formula. She did something far more dangerous. She stayed quiet. For days after the confrontation, there were no dramatic posts, no cryptic captions, no emotional live videos, and that silence became the loudest statement of all. Because when someone who has always protected another person suddenly stops speaking, people notice. Fans noticed. Blogs noticed. Industry insiders noticed. The absence of Rasheeda's voice created a vacuum, and into that vacuum, speculation poured in. Rumors exploded across timelines. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Was this finally the end? Behind the scenes, Rasheeda was doing something she hadn't done in years. She was choosing herself. Sources say she didn't rush into public statements because she didn't need validation. She had already survived the worst part privately. Everything after that was strategy. She met with lawyers. She met with advisors. She reviewed footage. She reviewed messages. She made decisions from a place of clarity, not emotion. And when she finally spoke, she didn't shout. She controlled the narrative. Rasheeda didn't attack Kirk publicly. She didn't insult him. She didn't drag names through captions or clap back at strangers. Instead, she let the truth exist. And the truth didn't need help. Once whispers of the pregnancy spread, fans began connecting dots on their own. Old clips resurfaced. Old interviews took on new meaning. Moments that once seemed forgivable now looked like warnings ignored for too long. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Support poured in for Rasheeda from fans who had once criticized her for staying. Many admitted they had judged her unfairly. Others apologized openly, saying they finally understood how deeply manipulated she had been. And then there were the questions. Why had she stayed so long? Why protect someone who repeatedly disrespected her? Why forgive betrayal after betrayal? Rasheeda didn't answer those questions directly, because she didn't need to. Her actions answered them instead. By refusing to shield Kirk any longer, she made one thing clear: loyalty should never require self-destruction. As Kirk's image began to unravel publicly, Rasheeda's strengthened. She wasn't framed as weak. She wasn't framed as naive. She was framed as human. A woman who tried. A woman who endured. A woman who finally said enough. And that shift mattered. Because for years, Rasheeda had carried the weight of Kirk's mistakes quietly. She absorbed judgment meant for him. She defended actions that never deserved defense. Now the roles reversed. Kirk was forced to face the consequences without her standing in front of him as a shield. And for the first time, he had nowhere to hide. Meanwhile, Rasheeda's silence transformed into presence. Every appearance, every move, every absence was analyzed. And through it all, she remained composed. Not cold. Not bitter. Just finished. What makes this story resonate so deeply isn't the cheating. It's the pattern. It's how many times someone can be disrespected before choosing themselves. It's how loyalty becomes dangerous when it's one-sided. And it's how powerful it is when someone finally walks away, not with rage, but with certainty. As of now, divorce rumors continue to swirl. Legal steps are reportedly in motion. And while neither side has confirmed every detail publicly, one thing is undeniable. This chapter is closed. But the story isn't over. Because public fallout has a long tail. And reputations don't recover easily from this level of exposure. Fans are divided, some wondering if reconciliation is still possible, others insisting this was the final straw that should have happened years ago. And that debate is exactly why this story continues to dominate timelines. Because it forces a question no one likes answering. How much betrayal is too much? And maybe the most important question of all. At what point does staying stop being loyalty and start being self-erasure? Rasheeda answered that question for herself. Now the audience has to answer it too. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe Rasheeda made the right decision walking away, finally choosing herself after years of betrayal? Or do you think forgiveness should have gone even further? Was Kirk ever truly committed to change? Or was this outcome inevitable from the start? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This conversation matters, and your perspective matters. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like this video to help others see the full story beyond the headlines. Subscribe to the channel for deeper dives into real celebrity narratives that don't just chase drama, but expose patterns, truth, and power shifts. And turn on notifications, because this story isn't finished yet. New details are still emerging. More voices are stepping forward. And the next chapter may change everything, again. Stay tuned.